Hello, everybody. This is Ari. This is Ari. And I hope you guys are all doing good today. I'm doing pretty good. This is welcome to the first episode of this podcast. I could name it like Thought Block. Or, yeah, it should be a combination between the Thought Block stuff and the Be Black stuff. One thing I've been thinking about a lot is why so many people feel like they're never enough. You know? I feel like in today's kind of age, where social media is the dominant, the dominant platform or medium when it comes to content, we consume like a colossal amount of stuff, right? And I find it interesting that that excess, that excess can lead us into feeling like emptier than humans have ever felt in the history of existence, right? Like look at things like advertising, like Revlon, Maybelline, all these companies. You see all these ads, all these beautiful, gorgeous women. Calvin Klein, the guys are ripped, shredded. It kind of like programs your mind to think in terms of like scarcity. Like you don't have what you need to be successful, and in this case, the success is tied to like your attractiveness, right? And like it's it's really odd, right? That's the norm. That these businesses, these corporations, they essentially profit off of like a collective form of anxiety, right? Like anxiety inducing imagery of these brands. They make you think you're not smart enough, sexy enough, happy enough. And only through buying that product or giving into that good or service, only then can you feel like you're worthy, like you're enough. That's something that's odd to me. And to touch more upon what I mentioned earlier, relating to like the excess, right? It kind of seems like we're in a bit of a paradoxical time, you know. Like the majority of us who reside in first world countries, we enjoy basically unlimited access to that excess, unlimited access to near endless amount of pleasures, right? Like I wouldn't really be exaggerating if I said that pretty much anything we want can just be gained through a tap of your finger. You have things like DoorDash if you want a snack, if you want food, things like Tinder for dating, Instagram, literally anything you want, material or not, is virtually like this distance away from you having it. And in some cases, that's great. In some cases, that's awesome. People that don't have the ability to move, or like maybe their family is like another country or super far away, so they if they didn't have Skype or Zoom or Discord, they couldn't talk to them and build those connections and maintain those connections and relationships that are integral to like your health, right? But if we do have all of this power and all of this endless possibility, then I feel like why do some people feel like we are never enough, right? Why do we feel like sometimes no matter what we say, what we do, what we eat, even what we buy, just in general, through it all, we can never just be content with what we have? And like, listen, I know I'm not the only one who has these kind of questions, right? If you spend like 10 minutes on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, I'm sure you'd come across like hundreds of videos that reveal to you some sort of secret to escaping the matrix, right? Or the 10-step protocol to finally breaking free. Now, something I find ironic is this. What I find ironic is that while these videos purport themselves as being kind of like I guess, a saving social grace in these dark times, I find that they can actually do a lot more harm than they initially intend. And, is that the fault of these creators? Like, are they a part of some dark society, a nefarious, group that has the sole objective of, like, mentally enslaving the minds of you and me? I don't really think it's that deep. Like this isn't 1984. This isn't like a Orwellian kind of fever dream. But it's important for us to realize that this life is very, very far from perfect. The landscape is changing each and every single day that we're awake. To some people, specifically in the United States, it could seem that, or it does seem rather, that our nation's divide is deeper than it's ever been, right? People in some places don't feel safe walking around their cities, letting their kids out to play. Look at like New York with the migrant crisis and stuff. There's a lot of social upheaval, and rightfully so. There's very serious issues going on. And to kind of put it in an image, like the kettle is kind of, how kettles whistle, right? The kettle is doing far more than just a mere whistle. It's screaming. You like that, right? Yeah, it's screaming. So I just find that interesting. I feel like people, it's hard to live. Sometimes it's hard to live. People make it hard to live, right? Companies make it hard to live. Social media makes it hard to live, but that is not how this life should be. I truly feel that life is the easiest. Life is the best when you make it simple, right? What's hard is defining that. What's hard is defining that simplicity, because a lot of the times people like me, I'm 22, I spend way too much time on this thing. And what I find is that it's hard to simplify life when you have things like this, things like the computer I'm recording this on, speaking to. It's hard to simplify when you're surrounded by a smorgasbord, a plethora of just endless consistent information that, again, while consistent and easily accessible, it's almost like every corner you turn, the thing that you just read or just watched contradicts. Like the next thing you come across contradicts what you previously watched or read, right? And that makes it hard for people to think for themselves. So older people and like future, what's it called, the boomers, right? Because Gen Z people, we love to make fun of boomers, but it's like they they didn't grow up like this. Like we grew up, with alongside this stuff, right? And it's interesting to see now, like Gen Alpha, again, is growing in a similar way. They're growing up with it, but like it's literally, and I'm not even like exaggerating when I say it is literally raising some children. Think about the most recent time you went to, if you went on a trip, if you're privileged to have gone on an airplane and you have gone through the airport system, right? I'm sure you saw like 10 to 20 iPad kids, or you saw like a family of 4, family of 5. The parents are just like they're sitting waiting for the plane in the terminal, and the kids are just glued. What are they doing? They're just glued to their thing, glued to the screen, glued to the iPad, the phone, what have you. And that's something that has never happened. That's something that is like novel to our generation and Gen Alpha. But specifically Gen Alpha, because again, like as I said, it's raising them, you know what I'm saying? And when you have something like the internet playing that big of a role on someone's brain development, I'm no neuroscientist, but I imagine, that's a horrible, it could lead to some awful, potentially catastrophic impacts later in their life. Why? Because they can't, again, going back to the simplicity thing, you can't make a life simple when your life and all of your values, all of your emotions, all of your opinions on pop culture are like sourced from what you read on this. It's hard. It's really hard. I'm, and I'm not trying to be like a holier than thou kind of guy. Like I admit I'm young. I'm 22. I spend too much time on TikTok sometimes, Reddit, whatever the medium is. But I feel like going forward, what people need to realize is because a lot of people say like on YouTube, right? There's a big movement of, I think it's still pretty big, but it was big like let's say a couple months ago. The dopamine detox stuff, or resetting your serotonin, dopamine, whatever. What I don't get about that is, you know, obviously, the people that record these videos have good intentions, to help people get off their phone. But you could argue it's not really useful because you go, say you're addicted to your phone, you spend 11, 12 hours a day on your phone, which is crazy. And then you watch one of these videos from your favorite influencer saying, oh, yeah, I stopped dopamine. I didn't do anything for 30 days. And then what do? They talk to you about all the benefits, blah, blah, blah. But most of the time, when people go on these detoxes, the detox, like, it's a temporary fix to, like, a problem that will just continue after you do the detox. You're going to think, oh, okay, I'm fixed. I can go back. I have all these new methods to manage my social media use, my addiction. And you go back, and then what happens? You get looped back in, right? And that doesn't mean that you're weak, that you're stupid, that you didn't follow all the rules right. It just means that you're simply human, right? And like, again, I keep bringing this thing up because these things and these apps and these platforms, everything about them, they're literally designed. They have like Bruce Wayne level niggas like working on the code and what have you to make it so it's almost almost literally impossible to put it down, right? Almost literally impossible to put it down. Almost literally impossible to go without it, right? So you have that. You have the design, the design of these addictive games, platforms, whatever, which is one side of the coin. You flip it over and you have the another side, which is the social kind of landscape, that I mentioned before, how it's kind of changing. But with that, you have, for example, look at the war that will forever go on between iPhone and Android. The war between Blue Bubble and Green Bubble, right? Especially, at least in the United States, right? If you have an Android, like you're a clown, you're stupid, you're this, you're that, you're missing out. And while like in high school and stuff, like obviously it's stupid, but like it's like good fun, I guess. But think about if someone hears something like that like every single day, right? Because you don't have this thing, because you don't have this app, you are weird, you are ostracized, you're an outsider, you're different. And because you're different, that makes you quote unquote bad. I don't that's not the way you should be thinking, but like how else are you going to think when all of your friends, your family, people who like are in your circle are reiterating the same kind of stuff? It's like an echo chamber, right? So people wonder why, like teen suicide rates and stuff have just been climbing since the advent of these things. Since look at, like, if you look at the stats and stuff, the recent stories with Meta and stuff, like people trying to sue that company, and some people would say rightfully so because, obviously, like, no one wants their child to feel like they're inadequate or like they're not beautiful, they're not funny, they're not this and that. Obviously, it's horrible. So when a company, provides a platform like Facebook and stuff where every day that poor kid goes on there seeking an escape from, the trauma that they face maybe at home physically or, God forbid physically or emotionally, or maybe at school with their, immediate circle of let's say, since let's say they're not very social, so I won't use the word friends, but just their peers, they're bullying them. It's horrible. They can't get an escape at home. They can't get an escape at school. So what do they turn to? Obviously, they turn to something like Facebook or, well, I guess not anymore, but TikTok, whatever. So imagine everyone in your life is just not not on your side of the ring. They're just roasting you, everything. You turn to something like the internet, and you're amazed, like, oh my god, I can talk to, like, the Discord. You can talk to anybody you want. You can keep it anonymous, blah blah blah. So you stay, you start getting more active in these things. Maybe you start posting stuff, or maybe, no, maybe you start reading up on articles and stuff, like playing games. You get a little bit more confident, and then one day you let that anonymity slip. Maybe you post a selfie. Maybe you've been inspired by an influencer you've seen. And all the people are saying online, from what you see, embrace the person you are. Don't change for anybody else, which is great advice. But what happens when a person does that? They give in, and then it all goes to shit. The hate comments start coming in. People at school start finding out. God forbid you have a family situation where they start finding out and they treat you just as bad, if not worse, than your peers. Because at least I was going to say, at least with your peers in school, like you're not going to see the people you go to high school with like forever, like after high school, say you go to college, get a job, like theoretically you could, like, let's say 50 to 60% of the people you've like came across in high school, you probably won't see again in your life. That's just how it is. But family, that's for life. And if that system, specifically family, if that system is not like strong, that leads to so many problems. Leads to so many problems. So again, I'm rambling, but it's hard. It's hard. I Again, life is easiest when you make it simple. And the solution for this solution, I mean, I really don't know. The solution to this problem is not something I can speak on because I don't have true experience. I am far too young to understand the complexity of something like this. And people in my generation, on social media, they can say, "Oh, this is the secret to breaking the matrix, blah, blah, blah." All that shit is a scam to get you to buy programs, to get you to buy books you don't need, to get you to buy clothes you don't need, to indoctrinate you into a system that is the exact same thing that they ironically are telling you that is the thing you need to break away from. So I feel like if I were to comment and give you a call to action for a way to fix this problem, right? I would say two things. The first thing I would say is you need to do all that you can do to make your life simple. I'll say it again, you need to do all that you can do to make your life as simple as possible. Now that can mean many different things. For me, what makes my life simple is having, a fair amount of hobbies that I'm into. So I like to play video games from time to time. I enjoy movies, like cartoons and stuff. I like to turn to those things as an escape, right? Which is fine. Everyone has something they like. What makes it hard to turn to those things is when you have to rely or choose to rely on, again, like TikTok or Reddit or YouTube for, I'm not going to say your source, because I'll watch YouTube videos on whatever, but it's like you have to understand that like you're allowed to think for yourself. Like one thing I'll mention is movie reviews. So this is a perfect example. So the new movie that came out, the new Spider-Man or Sony movie that came out, Madam Web, right? With Dakota Johnson, Sydney Sweeney. I those are obviously only two actresses I know from that movie. If you just Google Madam Web, the first thing that will come up is probably, I'm sure it'll be the YouTube video or YouTube series about movies being bad. It'll be plastered everywhere. Madam Web is horrible. Madam Web is the worst movie of all time, cringy. And then you scroll down, you'll get into more of like the more right leaning stuff, like, oh, it's too woke, this, whatever. And it's like, it's fine to have an opinion. If you don't like it, okay, that's cool. And then people have to make money off of that opinion. So obviously, you're gonna find articles and stuff, whatever. But my problem is this: for someone who hasn't watched that movie, right? If you yourself did not go with yourself, you didn't take yourself, but go by yourself to the movie, or take your girlfriend, take your friend. If you didn't see the movie, but then you go on social media and you see your favorite influencer saying, oh, I hate this movie. This movie's ass. Don't watch. Don't watch. Don't watch. What do you think you're gonna do? What do you think a young person's going to do? They're going to internalize that opinion, and you're going to think that it's your own, right? And then your friend, maybe someone who likes superheroes, says, "Oh, hey, want to see Madam Web?" You're like, "No, ew, what the fuck's wrong with you? Like, are you stupid? That movie's so too woke, too whatever." And like, nigga, you didn't watch it. Like, that doesn't make any. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's just so weird. Like, I was talking to my buddy about this very phenomenon, how people don't think for themselves, and that's just obviously it's worse with younger generations, like my generation, Gen Alpha. But I really just think in general, across all people that are alive in first world countries that have access, unlimited access to things, like TikTok, whatever on the iPhone. As each day goes on, more and more people just succumb to that pressure and like lose that battle. The battle being like upholding your critical thinking ability and like your individuality and like being willing to speak out on stuff, right? And I mean that's I truly feel that's all we have as like people, like as humans. Like at the end of the day, that's what we are. We're just people. We just gotta live. We gotta do what we gotta do. We got a job, pay bills, whatever. But like, you gotta question. Like that's why, if you, I'm sure if you ask any old person, your grandparents, or just like watch one of those, if you don't have any near you, sadly maybe they passed away, or something like that. And if you just go on YouTube and look up like old person advice, the one thing that they'll always say when talking about young people, and if they were talking to their 20-year-old self, but the one thing they'll reiterate is you should never stop learning, right? Never stop learning, you know. But also, I feel like what ties into that is what I just mentioned before. You should always be learning and always be inquisitive. Always be learning and always be inquisitive, you know? Because if you're not, then, I know how I mentioned prior, it's not a 1984 Orwellian fever dream, but if you don't ask questions, if you don't have that curiosity, if you don't have the gall to challenge, I'm not saying you need to be like a fucking like you're not okay, all this like main character talk, like you're not Leonardo DiCaprio, you're not Bruce Wayne, you're not like, that kind of level. But just generally as a person, like if someone tells you this celebrity is bad, this is a dumb example because celebrity news is stupid, but if someone says this celebrity is bad because of X, and then you just accept it. You just say, okay, that's my whole thing. I completely agree with you, blah 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 blah. And you start thinking that. The really bad thing about nowadays is the phones, the computers can hear you. So I'm being kind of crazy, but if someone says, "Oh, Michael B. Jordan is like racist to me," and the phone hears that, right? Then I'll go on social media, or whatever, and because the phone heard that, I'm thinking about it. This is like bro science conspiracy, obviously, but like there's like a layer of truth to this. Obviously, people know this, but so someone told to me, and I'm thinking about it. I'm looking up content relating to that stuff. My algorithm sees that I'm interested in the stuff, and it feeds it and funnels it back to me. So it's kind of like an echo chamber, right? This is just how these things work. Because obviously, the way to get views and eventually money and stuff is to not tell people what they need to hear, but to tell them what they want to hear. That is how you get eyes, right? Tell people what they want to hear, or tell people what they want to hear is one way, or say stuff that just makes people mad, like rage bait. Those are the two ways. If you want to try to, make money, get a big influencer following on your platform of choice, tell niggas what they want to hear, echo chamber, or tell niggas what they hate to hear, and just rage and it'll fester. That's that has been proven to be true. At least that's what I experienced. But if you have a different opinion, of course you're free to express it. You're just wrong. I'm kidding. But yeah. So wow, I've been yapping for 25 minutes. So yeah, I just wanted to come on here and just talk about some stuff that's been in my head. I did not think I would be yapping for this long, but I hope that at least one person who miraculously comes across this video can hear some amount of the truth I'm saying, and it can help you have a better day. Thank you for giving me the time to again yap and share my opinions. We're all gonna make it, bro. You'll be alright. Until next time. Peace. Oh, I didn't press the button. That's hilarious.